Hello, Escape Collective podcast listener. I'm Dane Cash, and I'm pretty serious about bike racing, so you can imagine just how excited I get this time of year, what with the Tour de France and all. And I'm also excited for you, because if you sign up to join Escape Collective right now, your first month will only cost $1. That means you'll get full access to all of our bike racing news and analysis, tech coverage, and everything else in between here on podcast channels and also over the website. So you can expect us to be pretty busy over the next few months, and if you want to read or listen to what we have to say without hitting paywalls or missing members-only episodes of our podcasts, or if you want to talk bikes with the rest of our awesome community on our Discord server, it's a pretty awesome opportunity to join up. Plus, you'll be supporting everything we're doing here, and we really and truly cannot do this without your support. Head on over to escapecollective.com/TDF to sign up, and remember, if you do it now, your first month will only cost you $1.
Welcome back to the Escape Collective Tour Daily Podcast, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz. I'm here with Johnny Long. Johnny, we're off the backside of the Galibier down in Valloire. Just as we hit record here, Pogačar opened up the first significant gap of this Tour de France, went over the top of Galibier with what, about 7-8 seconds?
Yep, 7-8 seconds, maybe 10 seconds back to Jonas Vingegaard, who immediately jumped on Pogačar's wheel again, but then we just saw that gap just eke out. Remco Evenepoel as well, good showing. Maybe the only rider who's ever got even that close to following those two.
Yep.
He's a few further seconds back. Now they're on the descent, and it's a rush down to meet us in Valloire.
Interesting GC stage today. We thought maybe it would be a breakaway stage, but they never were given that big of a leash. They only got about 3 minutes, which meant that it was never going to happen, really. I mean, the second they got onto the steeper slopes at the top of the Galibier, the top guys were always going to overhaul that breakaway. Oh, Pogačar's flying down this hill. Chill out, buddy.
I tell you what, even, yes, this descent is one of those nerve-wracking watches. He goes wide and nearly ends up in someone's caravan. But even when they were attacking up the climb, there were some of those corners they just took so wide.
Well, it's all wet too, because there's still quite a bit of snow up there, and the snow's obviously melting. You know, it's what, 15, 20 degrees up here or in Valloire, warm enough to melt. So their tires are getting wet and then dry and then wet and then dry, and so they're trying to have to predict how much traction they have, particularly coming out of those corners with the wet tires. So the final group, I guess what we could consider the real GC contenders, so to speak, of this Tour de France for really like sort of the whole top five-ish. We had Almeida, Ayuso, and Poggi from UAE. We had Vingegaard alone because Matteo Jorgensen dropped off with a couple kilometers to go in the climb. We had Remco and Landa, both from Quick-Step. So Remco did have a teammate there near the finale. Roglic was solo, and Carlos Rodriguez was solo. So this sort of backs up what we had said prior to the race, which is that UAE is clearly the strongest here at this Tour de France. Visma is a shadow of themselves, just based off this Galibier.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they are missing key domestics. I mean, Sepp Kuss, who Visma have never won a Grand Tour without. He's not here. He would traditionally be Vingegaard's last man in the mountains. Just what the gap is holding, I have to say, watching Vingegaard descend, even though he apparently was here a week and a half ago, reconning the descent, he's a lot tougher of a watch. At least for this descent, not saying it normally, but just for this one.
Yeah. So we're standing at 3:50 to go.
Yeah.
We could set the scene a little bit now that we've sort of talked a little bit about how the race is going. We're at 3:50 to go. Turns hard right here, and then they head up. The final 300 meters is all uphill to the finish line. So we're going to be able to see them come by and see how they take this corner in just a little bit.
It's almost a chicane, really. It snakes round and then heads up. They will go past through this sort of high street of Valloire, where there are currently about a dozen rotisserie chickens roasting just to our left. They look absolutely delicious.
Maybe that's what we'll do for dinner tonight.
Maybe.
Ooh.
A little self-service. But yeah, the fans are out. The barrier people are really closing out now. It's all about to get a bit crazy here.
Yep.
As the riders approach. And they're going to, I mean, it's 15k to go, but they're going to be here before we know it, really.
Yes.
The speeds they go at.
So let's take a quick break and go see who we can talk to, see what other information we can gather, and then we'll be back with more of the Tour Daily Podcast in just a moment. they come. All right, here he comes. Pogačar is coming. Moving. Gap is about 30 seconds, so he's pulled out 20 more seconds on the descent. He's got these sort of squiggles around to the finish line. We're waiting on the next group, which Remco just attached himself to.
Here they come now. They're banging the boards. Feels like an age.
Remco leads into it. Pogačar wins stage 4 of the 2024 Tour de France. Remco sprinting in, looks like for second place, followed by Primož Roglič.
Oh, one more corner. There's always one more corner.
There's always one more
Here they
corner.
come.
And Ayuso still trying to snag some seconds.
Oh, he might Roglic.
He Roglic. Oof.
Evenepoel, and then a gap back to Vingegaard with Rodriguez on his wheel.
Holy hell, Johnny, what a
What
stage.
a day. Just trying to process it. That's a great one. Racing.
Well, so the Tour de France isn't over, right?
No, by any means.
There was some concern ahead of today that, there'd be like a 5-minute gap or something like that. I think
Less than a minute, I think.
That was never
Way
going to happen with the pretty stiff headwind that was up the other side of the Galibier. But it was definitely, wow. It was Pogačar putting his stamp down on this bike race. He's not here to come second again.
Definitely not. And I mean, the way UAE worked all day, Nils Pollitt pulled the whole peloton over 2 mountains. And then what we really saw was the strength in numbers. Like, we were even talking earlier today about when we saw like Ayuso dropping off the back. I mean, Ayuso had a really strong finish that race, but a couple of times we've seen him in places where you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be. And so you're questioning how good is he feeling. But they actually, UAE had a plan, they had numbers, and then Pogačar launched and actually managed to put distance between him and Vingegaard, which he hasn't for a while.
Small thing I just noticed. So, day like today, we got the next group coming by here. Day like today, I mean, it's clear to me that UAE optimized for the descent today. And the reason I say that is because he was running. There's Matteo Jorgensen leading the next group across. Geraint Thomas was in there.
Adam Yates
was in there. No, so the reason I say that is because he was running deeper wheels. Obviously, he's moving that fast. I can't tell you exactly which ones. My guess is they're the sort of regular 4.5s that he often runs. I'm not Ronan to do tech stuff here, but you run the deep wheels because you want to be further optimized for the descent, basically, for those really, really high speeds. And Vingegaard was the opposite. Vingegaard was on, I believe they're the reserve 32s, right? So they're a real pure climbing wheel. So he was optimizing for essentially the final kilometer uphill on the Galibier. And it just a difference in approach here today, and maybe one that spoke to varying confidence levels of the two. Because we did see Vingegaard run more aero wheels in mountain stages occasionally last year.
What else can we extrapolate? Yeah, I mean, it's literally the stage just finished a minute ago. But so Remco not hung on with them, but was close over the top of that climb, and then lost time on the descent. So maybe not a great descent from him, but then managed to catch back up to groups on the flat a bit. And a good performance because he finished third, right?
The descent kind of levels out for a little bit there, and we do know that Remco he's an extraordinarily aerodynamic individual. Ronan has talked about this a bunch of times. When you're at those sorts of speeds, it makes a massive difference. I mean, this is largely how he won not just his time trial worlds, but his road worlds. And he's just got an aerodynamic body, apparently, like low CDA is the actual, I guess, term for it. He was able to come across some combination of power and aerodynamics, was able to make contact with that group again. He was also, as we pointed out earlier, the only one to sort of attempt to jump onto the dynamic duo. And I wonder whether he slightly regretted that shortly after. But regardless, he was able to recover. He was able to come back, and he finishes on the same time with the rest of the riders that are shooting for second and third at this point.
Exactly. Well, what we've heard as well so far this tour is the other GC riders outside of Vingegaard and Pogačar not necessarily that confident in wanting to immediately jump on those wheels. So regardless of the actual result, the fact that he felt like he wanted to do that, there goes the yellow jersey Richard Carapaz, Ben Healy leading him in.
So Carapaz had a rough day today. If he's
dropped like a stone,
if he's climbing the Galibier with Ben Healy, I mean, Ben Healy is a phenomenal bike racer, but he is not a Richard Carapaz level Grand Tour contender. If Carapaz is coming across the line with Healy, then Carapaz had a rough go of it today in the yellow jersey. The weight of yellow a little bit too much for him.
Indeed.
Which is unfortunate because he was a good yellow. He's a good guy in yellow. We like little Richie.
Well, but we've switched again. We've not had a day with a rider spending more than one day. I mean, Pogačar gets it back now.
All right, so next up for us, we're heading to the buses. We're going to go see who we can chat with, and then we will be digesting today's stage and chatting a bit more about it in a bit. Welcome back, everybody. Jonny, we just got back from wandering the buses. We ran over there, tried to chat with some folks. Who did you end up hearing from, talking to?
The main takeaway was how quiet it was at the Visma bus, mostly because it was like a cut road up the other side of the course, like with 400 meters to go.
Yep.
And unlike Italy, it was fairly hard to access and not really clear where it was.
Yep.
So there weren't many fans until they obviously saw the riders were going up. So all the media was already there, like 20, 30 people, and Jonas was warming down, and everyone was just silent.
He was just sitting
there. It was a bit eerie.
Yeah.
Eventually, sports directors sort of giving explanations.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's quite hard to hear. Like, you have to listen back to actually hear what was said, even though you're standing out there, because everyone talks quite quietly. Just so the mics can
it's like
just
they don't want to be heard.
Yeah. It's just like Matteo Jorgensen. Like, obviously, he's probably fairly not upset, maybe disappointed with how the day went, that he couldn't exactly replicate the Sepkus role, which is, we'll get to later and is understandable.
Yep.
But he was talking so quietly. So quietly, like almost where you're like, you want to give him like a tiny little hug, just be like, you know what, it's just a bike race, it will all be all right. But Jonas Vingegaard was probably the most upbeat of everyone. He warmed down, got back on the bus for 20 minutes, came back out, was like not making jokes, but like chuckling when he said certain things. Was like, the tour is still long.
I don't know. So here's the thing. I stood next to him for 2 sets of English language interviews.
Right.
And he made the same quote-unquote joke and the same chuckle.
So you think he goes back on the bus, rehearses lines, come back out?
I just think he's like, I think he said it the first time. He's like, oh, that worked. I'm going to do it again. I don't know. It's just,
I mean, if we were being asked all these questions all the time, every day, we would eventually just be like, you know what,
we would just inevitably say
here's the trash,
horrible.
You go eat it.
Yeah.
The main takeaway is he said that he expected to lose time on 3 of the 4 opening stages, and when pressed on exactly how much time he expected to lose, he said probably about 2 minutes.
Do we believe this?
I'm in the mindset now where I never know what to believe, because Visma have already said that they do mind games.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing necessary to be gained by exactly speaking the truth all the time if you're trying to win a bike race.
Correct.
This isn't new information, but it's just something to keep in mind, because sometimes it's tempting to just take everything at literal face value.
Well, and it benefits Visma at this point to say, particularly right after what happened today, which was a loss of, he's 50 seconds down now, right?
Yeah.
That's a significant amount of time, right? I mean, Tours de France have been won and lost with less.
Yeah.
So it benefits him to sort of play down expectations and say that actually this is a success. He didn't do to us what we thought he might do to us, right? And
it's a real spin zone, isn't it?
It's a spin zone. So why don't rather than us repeating what he said, why don't we were standing there with a microphone. Let's hear Jonas.
Of course, I would have liked to close the gap instead of that it opening up even more. But I think for the first part of the downhill, I kept the gap. The second part is more straight and where gravity helps you out a bit more. And I think it helped him out in this situation. So I think that's just how it is, and I have to accept it. Of course, I would have liked to stay with him, but that's life. And we came here believing that we would lose time the 3 out of the first 4 stages. So to only lose time in one of them is pretty good in my opinion. To be only 50 seconds behind it's still quite good, and our time will come. To be honest, I'm pretty satisfied. As I said, I was also doubting myself going into this tour. I didn't know where I was as well. So, to be able to only lose time in 1 out of out of 3 stages. I think that's more than we could have expected. And to be honest, also today, it wasn't like he was a lot stronger uphill. So the tour is long, and we will do our best.
What are the GC storylines that we have? We mentioned a lot of it earlier. I think Remco had a good day.
Yeah.
Ayuso turns out had a great day. He's been
what's going on? We need to find out what's actually going on with him because he'll drop
some riders.
back.
There's an old teammate of mine, Jamie Driscoll. He was a cyclocross racer in the U.S. for a long time. We used to call him the Dangler because he just wouldn't close the gap. He would just sit 5 meters off the back of whoever else was there. And I'm just wondering if Ayuso's a dangler. This is maybe a question for Dane. Think back over previous Grand Tours. Does he tend to sit just a little bit off of groups or sit at the back of groups that he could be at the front of? Because, he ended up making a very select selection today, right? But he was also at the back of a group of 50 and looked like he was getting dropped at one point.
Yeah, weird. I don't know. We need to get into this because it's confusing me. It's confusing. For half the day, we were like, "Oh, UAE, are we sure that they're actually looking good?" Because they were hanging out at the back, we didn't see how many numbers they had when Visma still had a couple people at the front. So it just completely changed on its head. For a while, it completely changed on its head because we were sitting here having a lunch earlier, waiting for the race to arrive, and we were accidentally watching a replay of stage 1 instead of stage 4.
We're sitting here going, Romain Bardet is active this tour.
We were like, that's Frank Vandenbroek going up the road again, and he's got Bardet with him. So Frank Vandenbroek's going for the stage, and then Bardet is trying to get back in yellow. And then it took us 20 minutes when Pro Cycling Stats wasn't showing what we were seeing on the TV to realise we were watching a replay. So that was fun. We nearly had today was an interesting day, very interesting day. We nearly had an even more interesting day.
How great would it have been if we never switched? And then we walked over to watch the finish at 300 meters, and we were just deeply confused as to why we didn't see Romain Bardet.
Calling it in before it comes, Romain Bardet is going to be coming around the corner any minute.
We are idiots sometimes.
When you said, you were like, guys, to me and Tom Carey from The Telegraph, and I thought something really bad had happened. But it turned out it wasn't bad, it was just foolish. That was fun. Being
idiots.
We've got there's some other. Shall I run into the other sort of observations that saw from the ground today that other people wouldn't have seen? So as mentioned earlier, walking up towards the buses, up this long swooping uphill bend in the road. First thing, Ben Healy comes past after probably helping Richard Carapaz to the finish after he sort of plummeted out of the yellow jersey.
Yeah, well, I think I said at the time, it was a superb day for Healy.
Yeah.
To be able to hang on and help Carapaz.
And to be that close to other
and to be that close to
climbers.
the other pure climbers. He's a bit of a head start. But superb day for him nonetheless.
Yeah.
Less good day for Carapaz.
Yeah.
The mood at EF was not superb, but at the same time, he
had a yellow jersey.
I was chatting with Matt Bowden, the press officer there, and he's like, honestly, it's not tour made. They're not done.
But it's if it had
but if
to
they
end
get
now,
to the end
like,
and nothing else happens,
fine.
They had a yellow jersey.
Because now it's just going to be the GC guys for the rest of the race.
Yeah.
And only who had the yellow jersey? Bardet, then Pogačar.
Yep.
Then Carapaz, Pogačar.
Now Pogačar.
So if you're one of 3 teams, if Pogačar goes all the way to Nice.
Yep.
Anyway, Ben Healy goes past. Wasn't that slanted because he was going at a slower speed. Usually he's really hanging over. And he gets stopped by a policeman, like a gendarme. It was, when Froome, what mountain was Froome on when he got stopped by I can't even remember.
Oh, God. I've been at the top of a lot of mountains with Chris Froome. I couldn't
the one where
I do remember
the gendarme and Chris was like, fuck you. That nearly happened as well. And Ben Healy's like, no, you don't need to stop me. I'm not like a punter. I just helped the yellow jersey get to the finish. And eventually enough people started shouting at the policeman that they let him go on. But it was just one of those moments when the Tour de France, you're like, there's just such a lack of sort of,
so we're Ben Healy fans here at Escape Collective. Turns out Ben Healy is an Escape Collective fan. I was chatting with him today.
Yeah.
Had just a little chat about, what was it like pacing Carapaz up the climb, blah, blah, blah. I turned my recorder off, and he turns to me and goes, I love Bike Grid.
See, Bike Grid is a daily source of frustration for me because I get 2 wrong or get one above 20 and I get annoyed.
I'm going to prove it. So the first thing I said was, can I record you saying that? Because
marketing.
Andy and Jason, marketing, right? We would love to. We're going to put that up on social later. So maybe we'll just drop that in right here, just as proof.
Okay.
Tell me about your favorite game.
bike grid, obviously. Should get on it. No cheating though. There's too many cheaters on this leaderboard. We want legit answers only.
There you go. He loves it. He's absolutely huge fan, which means that we are fans also in return.
I mean, we were fans of Ben Healy already.
Nonetheless, sus-o-meter.
For what? Oh.
As he's just riding along. How sus is he look? He looks more sus than I would say most of the pros.
Why? Because of his hair?
Yeah.
Well, my hair's also got did before I came out. I mean, his is platinum blonde.
Yeah.
Like, he's an EF. You can do what you want in EF. You can, you can pierce.
You don't think he looks a little bit sus?
I prefer
in the nicest possible way. This is actually a compliment.
Look, okay. You turned 36 the other day. You're a father of 2. You're not supposed to have platinum blonde hair. That would be worrying. Ben Healy is living his best life. He's got a nice little dog. His Instagram is just very, stylish. He's doing everything. He can do whatever he wants. I like it.
Part of the reason
better than the old one.
Part of the reason I wanted to name him as sus is I want to find out if he listens to the pod. Because if he listens to the pod, we're going to hear about it now. So
surely,
we'll walk
I
by
can't imagine the riders listen to the pod.
They have nothing else to do.
Yeah, but surely they're so bored of cycling by the end of the day that they listen to someone else.
Maybe. I mean, you and I were listening to a soccer football podcast today because we're like, we need to not think about bikes for about an hour.
Okay, we should actually come up. Okay, maybe he won't listen today. Maybe he'll be tired. Tomorrow's like a sprint day off for him. Maybe tomorrow we'll come up with a secret way that Ben Healy can let us know. Because remember when we did this with Tom Pidcock either last year or the year before, we thought he referenced something in the podcast, and neither we were letting our egos balloon above where they should be. But it was definitely a reference to something we had said in the pod. Other little just bits from my notebook. Number 77 for which team is in the 70s? Soudal Quickstep? Have you got the start list there?
I do. Hold on.
Number 77 is all I got written down. Incomplete notes.
Yeah, Soudal Quickstep. 77 is Ilan van Wilder.
Ilan van Wilder, number 77, came up past me. I think he might have been cycling alongside Jack Haig, our guy.
Friend of the pod.
Ilan van Wilder was just singing Another Day in Paradise, fairly loudly. Presumably taking the piss a bit. Maybe he genuinely enjoyed himself. Saw another GC guy who I'll remain unnamed was going past and just said, he said at some point I turned around to the group and just said to everyone, how the fuck are we going so fast? It's a headwind. So if you want info from inside the GC group for how it was today, they were also in disbelief. 2 more things. John Degenkolb came past and he said to someone he was riding alongside, I couldn't push above 400 watts. I may have never pushed above 400 watts in my life, so I need to know.
Who said this?
John Degenkolb. Bigger guy, classics.
Yeah. So I guess for context, he's probably roughly the same size as Jasper Philipsen.
Maybe a little bit bigger. He's got a bigger frame.
I was going to say maybe smaller, actually.
Really?
Jasper's a big boy.
Okay.
Jasper did something in the neighborhood of 360 watts for 6.5 hours at Roubaix to win Roubaix.
Okay.
Don't quote me on those exact numbers, but it was somewhere in that neighborhood. So 360 for 6 hours, right? Which means that so for me, over 400 is a lot of watts.
Yeah.
Something I can't do for a particularly long time.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes maybe. For those guys, that's basically saying he couldn't dip above sort of threshold.
Okay.
Right.
So
his threshold's probably not 400, but it's probably not that far off.
Got it. Last thing, it's just written down. Soudal Quickstep in the mountains. Weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
We're not weird in a bad way, just different. I'm not used to it. Maybe it's the red helmets as well.
We just kept looking up at the TV and being like, wow.
Why are they there?
Why are they there? You're either thinking they're currently pulling a lead out for Mark Cavendish up the Galibier, or they are about to win the Tour of Flanders up the Galibier. It doesn't make any sense to me. But here they actually had decent numbers, right? They had 2 left when nobody else had a teammate, right? It was UAE had 3, everybody else was solo, but Remco Evenepoel still had Mikel Landa.
Yeah, and more teammates later on than Jonas Vingegaard.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good little segue. So, sort of wrap the GC talk today. I think that the big thing that came out of the stage for me was, yes, of course, Pogačar takes some time, Vingegaard loses some time. That's an individual effort thing, and I think that could change on any given day, right?
Yeah.
But I think what won't change on any given day is the fact that we had 3 UAE riders and 1 there's zero teammates, really, like just Jonas Vingegaard isolated. Basically the first time he's been isolated that's not his own doing in the last 2 years, right? The only time he went solo was, when he was attacking, right? Couple exceptions with just him and Pogačar. But anyway, you get my point. Yeah. They really missed Sepp Kuss today. And I know that Matteo Jorgensen, like that is not a slight on Matteo Jorgensen, right? Like Matteo is an incredibly versatile rider, but he's not Sepp in the mountains, right? Nope. Yes, he won Paris-Nice. Yes, he had a great Dauphiné, but he's like way bigger. He's bigger.
Like kind of a big dude.
He's like over 6 feet tall.
Skinny, but he's big.
70 kilos plus, right? Sepp is a little whippet, and Sepp can hang on, and he can be there.
So small.
And I think in an ideal circumstance, Sepp is in this race. He goes over the top of the Galibier, probably pretty darn close to Vingegaard.
Yeah.
Maybe you put him in the group with like Remco or something like that, or sort of just behind.
Or in between, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's able to maybe help come across,
and they relay turns,
and then help Vingegaard pull a little bit, and that gap is a little bit smaller than it was today. I think they really missed him, and I think it's a bad sign for Visma going into this sort of second and third weeks of this race that they were able to isolate him so easily. Because, you and I were talking about headwinds and all the rest. The wind today was really strong, and it was mostly a headwind in the key areas, which means that it should hold the group together. Yeah. Right? Headwinds hold the group together. So the fact that despite that, Vingegaard was isolated, I would be pretty worried if I were him.
Well, before we return, just a little wrap on the GC as well. We actually have someone sitting with us who rode out the Galibier today, so can maybe tell us about the headwind.
That's right. We have Escape Collective member Damien. Welcome.
Hi, how you going?
You just rode down. You're still in your cycling kit. You look kind of cold, to be perfectly honest. I keep asking you if I can give you my jacket. You've just got a
galette,
a little galette in your belly now. What was it like up on the Galibier today?
It was fantastic. It was really hard climb to get up there. I rode up the Telegraph and then the Galibier. And then I had to sort of do a swift manoeuvre because the gendarmes wouldn't let you go over the other side, so I had to do a bit of rock climbing to get there. But then it was fantastic. It was freezing cold and it was very windy.
What did you see?
We saw Tadej come over ahead of everybody. Then Jonas didn't seem too far behind. I was really surprised to see Remco there. But it was a great day.
It was about 10 seconds, I think, where they would have passed you, and then Pogačar was able to essentially spread that gap out and had 30-something by the corner down here where they kick back uphill. So the other thing that's, I guess, sort of worth mentioning, we mentioned this briefly when we were chatting on the corner, right, when the riders were coming by, but just something that I noticed as we were standing there was the fact that Remco had deep wheels on and nobody else did.
Remco or Pogačar?
Sorry. Pogačar. I also called him Vingegaard earlier.
Yeah, that was
my brain. We're only on stage 4,
it's
and
fun. We're easing into it.
Here we go.
We just had a Vingegaard day.
Pogačar had deep wheels on. He had Envy's. I think it's a 4.5 AR. This may seem like a small thing, and you spoke with who do you talk with?
Arthur van Dongen, one of the Visma sports directors,
and he kind of downplayed it, right? But that's also the team. It's today's team of marginal gains, right? And I guess the interesting thing about that for me was you make a decision ahead of the race, what part of the race you're going to optimize for. And you make that decision generally based on either sort of confidence, optimism, or a little bit of pessimism and concern. So in general, you're going to run a shallower wheel if you're worried about getting dropped on the climb.
Yeah.
Right? So you optimize then for the steepest parts of the course. You're optimized for if you can hang on over the top, then you can follow the wheel all the way down and you don't worry about it. If you optimize in the way that UAE did today, the way that Pogačar did today, you're optimizing actually for the descent and for sort of like the stage in general, right? Like a deeper wheel is over the course of the entire stage going to save you a little bit of energy over a shallower wheel in theory. And I just found that very interesting because it to me, it spoke a little bit to, the confidence of the two teams, right? Where one team is saying they're basically optimizing for Pogačar being solo over the top of the Galibier. Now, you could argue maybe they were worried that he would be solo in second place, but I would say it's probably more likely that they were thinking they would be solo in first.
Ronan, we've asked Ronan about this. He's actually finally made it to Frankfurt for Eurobike. His second flight did also get delayed, so we thought maybe we're going to have to...
I say, has he really? Is he just going to pop out of here?
I'm not sure whether he's telling the truth. He's doing a Visma Lease bike. We can't actually guarantee what he's saying is true. He said it's difficult to say for sure, his view. Whenever I ask him something, he often says it's difficult to say for sure, and it's like...
And then he says for sure.
Yeah.
Right afterwards.
He says, obviously, typically deeper will be faster, but Jonas was on the S5 proper aero frame, while Tadej was on a not-so-aero bike.
Well, that kind of answers the question, like, which bike is more aero, but I still think that there's a choice to be made there, right? Where, so Jonas went with the aero bike, which is maybe a little bit heavier and the lighter wheels, but Pogačar goes with the bike he rides every stage, and the more aerodynamic wheels. And I still think that the choice that was made there, because we have seen Jonas run deeper wheels on mountain stages when he is very confident that he's going to end up in the win solo a lot, right? Meaning off the front. I think it says something. I'm not saying that this is
it's
like
a huge thing. It's just a little.
It's a little thing because most of the reason why Pogačar pulled out time on the way down was because he was sprinting out of every single corner. Right? Yeah. He was pedaling the bike harder than Jonas Vingegaard was. But that doesn't mean that essentially the optimization that they didn't also affect it by a couple seconds.
What's interesting,
right?
It's something that I didn't know before, so I've learned something new today, and it was great because all the questions that Van Dongen was being asked afterwards was all like nebulous sort of, how do you think Jonas will react to this? What's your read of the day? And then a question he definitely didn't expect to come up was asking about the optimization of the bikes, specifically from someone wearing like a pastel pink bucket hat. So that was very enjoyable. You could kind of see his eyes be like, oh, okay, this is happening.
Bucket hat guy.
So that was
great. Keep his eye on you now.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, there must be that guy's watching what we're doing with our bikes. Like, no, I'm not. I'm just reporting things that I'm being told without knowing what they mean.
I mean, I'll just say that it's tough to say which of those two setups are faster. But if I was at the top of the hill and I had to choose between the wheels that Pogačar was on and the wheels that Vingegaard was on, I want the wheels that Pogačar was on.
Okay. There we have it. What else from today? Anything else?
Well, we have a sizable corrections corner. Do we want to get to that?
God, we do. We do. Okay. Where to begin? Well, let's start with the Mayo Sable.
Yep.
And at the same time, we can give an update into the definitely correct wearer of the jersey after stage 4. So, Caley, would you like, after correcting me yesterday, actually, this is your one.
Yeah, so we've gotten this wrong. At literally every single Tour de France that we have started talking about the Mayo Sable, we have gotten it wrong. So yesterday, I was totally confident that the first thing that popped into my head was the opposite of what we should be saying. And so,
I see.
And so I was like, no, I'm going to self-correct immediately. Preemptively. And we're going to say the other thing, which was that the Mayo Sable is for under an hour.
Yeah.
But no, this is incorrect. In fact, I got a number of direct messages this morning with photos of the T-shirt that we made back in the day that explains the rules and has the list of winners. And all the list of winners are, you guessed it, over an hour.
Well, someone on Discord said the way you remember it is the 4 words, faster than 1 hour.
There you go.
Wait, that's confused me. No. Anyway.
Slower than 1 hour.
The new...
So the actual Mayo Sable, just to be very clear,
the closest
to an hour, but you must go over an hour.
Yes.
It is actual reverse Price is Right rules. Price is Right
that doesn't
rules,
mean anything,
which is what I said yesterday.
Okay.
But I screwed it up.
Okay.
I regret the error.
The new Mayo Sable in 102nd place with a time of 1 hour, 0 minutes and 1 second. It's Mr. Helicopter himself, Magnus Cort of Uno X Mobility. So maybe we could go talk to him about that tomorrow.
That is a great... We should.
I think he would be up for it.
I think he'd be stoked.
What's tomorrow's sprint stage? Is he going to be in...
Tomorrow's like a...
Christoph's lead out? Is he going to be too focused? We can try anyway.
Tomorrow's a weird stage. I think it is a sprint stage.
Okay, my corrections corner. I've just got 2 quickly to do. Yesterday, I gave my pick for today. Thanks to Ronan telling us it was going to be a breakaway day. Not true in the end. I picked Oscar Onley based on the fact that I was still off on a high off the England's Euros victory.
Yep.
And therefore picked Oscar Onley, who's in fact Scottish. So possibly one of the people on the planet the most not into England going any further in this tournament. So thank you for that correction. Other correction came in. Basically, this is almost becoming a Paw Patrol podcast. But I heard from Jonathan, who's PR from Shimano, that I referred to whether Paw Patrol have dominion over... No, they don't have dominion over it. The place they safeguard, supposedly, was Adventure City, but it's actually Adventure Bay. And I'm also hearing a lot about how Paw Patrol is just propaganda.
So first of all, thank you, Jonathan, friend of the podcast.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. Yeah, so I mean, clearly, I got this one wrong, right? Like, the original corrections corner was necessary because I screwed
And now
this one
we're
up.
just going to keep...
Because my children don't watch
Ian's
this.
do.
But Ian's do. So Ian's children are being... brainwashed into... So the allegation here, and I cannot say whether this is true in either direction, is that Paw Patrol is deeply fascist propaganda.
I don't know. I haven't looked. Well, I'm gonna watch.
I've watched a couple.
I'm gonna watch an episode.
I don't see it.
I'm gonna watch an episode. I might do a review for a Tour Daily After Dark, maybe on the rest day.
Yeah.
Put it really in the vestiges of where people maybe shouldn't be listening and tack it away for the real heads. But I'll find out.
So you called it what?
I called it Adventure City when it's actually Adventure Bay.
Oh. Do you regret the error?
Of course. Not as egregious as yours, but an error is an error. More to the point, I made 2 glaring errors in yesterday's newsletter because I was up way too late trying to finish it, and said the Tour de France Grand Depart in Copenhagen was in 2021. And I also said that Tadej Pogačar attacked on stage 1, which wasn't true. It's only day 4. I shouldn't be this far behind.
He didn't do that. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the corrections corner.
We regret the errors. Well, we're gonna wrap up today's episode, of course, with Jose Bain. But before we get to Jose, we're gonna talk to somebody who they know a little bit more about the bike race because they're in it.
Yeah,
Jack Haig, friend of the pod. Of course, you need to go check out Jack's Rest Day with Jack Haig podcast. We produce this alongside Jack all year. He's got some great interviews in there. He also does these actually really great, like, you wouldn't think it. He does like a 20, 25-minute kind of like monologue, just so like updating everybody on where he's at in the season and everything else. And they are...
Is it like ASMR?
It's great. It's like... Because he's really honest, and yeah, it just provides this insight into his world that you just don't get that often in pro cycling. Anyway, we asked him to do sort of like mini versions here at the Tour de France. So we basically have little Jack Haig diaries, and he sent one over this morning. I think he recorded like literally right after waking up.
You can kind of hear it.
You can hear his voice is like a little bit like...
That's how you know it's authentic, though.
Yeah. So he talks about the last couple of days. He also talks about today, and I think his guesses are pretty good. So we're going to listen to Jack now, and of course, we're going to be sort of catching up with Jack throughout the next 3 weeks.
Hey everyone, just a little update from the Tour de France. It's the morning of stage 4. I've just woken up, and today's one of the more relaxed days that we've had in the tour so far, because stage 1, 2, and 3 were pretty long days. For example, yesterday before stage 3, I set my alarm for 6:55, which is something that doesn't really happen very often in a Grand Tour. And the transfers to and from the stages as well have also been a bit of chaos, especially after all these first 3 stages, getting through the Italian traffic, and the Italian police don't seem to be doing the same job that maybe the French do. So it'll be nice to get into France today, I think, and get a bit more of a feel of being inside the Tour de France, because it kind of has this weird feeling like I've been doing the Giro for the first 3 days. To maybe go back and talk about the first couple of stages, I think by now everyone will have seen and heard a lot of people talking about them, but stage 1, super hot. Even though maybe the temperature wasn't crazy high, I think we maybe only got to a high of like 35 degrees or something, but just in the peloton and on the road, it felt really hot. Probably one of the warmest days I've had in a bike race. And I think that really took a toll on the peloton. Everyone was expecting UAE to take it up, but in the end, it was actually the breakaway that won, which was a really big surprise. And sort of when Romain Bardet attacked from the peloton to get across to his teammate in front, I was quite close to him. And when he did, I thought, I'll see him in 10Ks. And then anyway, chapeau, he stayed away. His teammate and him were super strong. And I was actually really happy to see him take the yellow jersey. He's a super nice guy. And then inside the peloton, not a whole lot happened, to be honest. It was kind of hard, but wasn't too bad. I think the heat just mainly sort of stifled everyone and kept a lid on everything. And then stage 2, San Luca. I've done this climb quite a lot when I was riding for Green Edge. I raced a lot of these Italian one-day races at the end of the season before Lombardia, and Giro dell'Emilia is one of them. So I knew the climb pretty well, but I don't think I've ever done the climb when it's been so hot and with so many people. The stage is pretty straightforward. Breakaway, again, can't believe it, 2 days in a row. Breakaway won the first 2 stages of the Tour de France, and by Arkea as well. And 2 French guys. 2 French guys winning the first 2 stages of Tour de France. Pretty impressive. From inside the peloton, again, not a whole lot to report. Pogačar and Jonas seem to be on that level above everyone else again. But I think a ride that might have gone a little bit underneath the radar is Remco. He was a little bit out of position both times on the San Luca climb, and he moved up the outside at the bottom of the climb like I was standing still and got straight to the front. And then he also did the whole last 6K to the finish line by the sounds of it on his own, with Richard not really giving him a turn. So I reckon he's probably had one of the better rides yesterday, and it will be interesting to see how he goes when we get to the actual mountains. Stage 3, that was a long day. Not only did I wake up at 6:55, I think we also had like 12 or 15 Ks neutral again, and then 230 Ks. Not a single person went in the breakaway. Headwind for a little bit of the day. Nothing really happened until we got to maybe 50 Ks to go, and then the pace sort of started to pick up and the sprint team started sort of fighting for position. But in reality, it was such big roads and quite fast. It was pretty easy to be inside the group there, and we just had that big crash with maybe 3 or 2 Ks to go. One good thing to add, I really like this 5K rule and the 3 second. And I almost think on stages like stage 3, where there's literally nothing in the final that could physically make a time gap, it would almost be better just to neutralize the time at 5K to go for the GC guys, and then there's really no stress. But I think inside the peloton and on the TV, you could see that the GC teams, once we crossed the 5K to go, sort of got out of the way and it left it to the sprint teams. So it'll be interesting to see how this experiment by the UCI goes the rest of the tour. Today, first Alpine stage going into France, Sestriere and Galibier. I expect quite a hard fight for the breakaway. It's tailwind at the beginning, slightly uphill going into Sestriere, which is quite a fast climb, super hard to control. I'll probably have a look for the breakaway. We'll see how it goes. Only if it kind of gets really hard and a bigger group goes, I'll have a look, because I've heard rumours that maybe UAE would like to control the day for Poggy, but let's see. He no longer has a yellow jersey anymore, and EF have it, so maybe they take it up control, and I think they'd be happy to see a break win.
The one thing I'll say, it's great to have Jack and a rider in the Tour de France who collaborates with us and on the podcast. Do you think he's too good of a rider to be associating with people like us? Because he's like a good rider.
I mean, possibly.
Do you think he regrets it and he's just too polite now?
He's been on the podium at the Vuelta.
He shouldn't be associating with us.
He's
not in this way.
Dragging his name down.
Yeah. Oh.
No, we really like Jack. I think Jack was briefly in the Mile Sable last year.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever spoke to him, and it was refreshing that he's kind of a normal dude who gets it.
We didn't realize that Jack was a friend of Escape Collective until that moment, where we brought him, hey, you're in the Mile Sable, and he knew exactly what it was, and he appreciated what he had earned for himself. And we were like, wait. Most pros have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, what I will say is that most of the time when pros because what we always say is there's way more of them than there are of us, as Ian would say, fuckheads.
Yes.
And most of the time they're also only interested in the tech stuff.
Yep.
Your Casper Asgrens, etc.
Casper loves Ronan.
Loves Ronan.
So,
yeah, Mile Sable. Maybe Magnus. No, Magnus Cort definitely has better things to be doing than being into the Mile Sable. But I think if we explain it to him, he will get it.
They pay closer attention to the media than we think.
That's worrying, because I just run my mouth talking nonsense. Okay, time for Jose?
Yeah, I love these little installments from Jose. And for stage 5, because we always talk about tomorrow's stage, we're passing Chambéry, which is home to the Decathlon Age Desert development team. And just a little bit of a Matteo Jorgensen, factoid here, is that he sent a whole bunch of emails to all these sort of French, European development teams. And the only one that responded was Chambéry, so he raced there for a while. We'll also look at the Shroud of Turin, because who doesn't love a bit of contrast with that? Let's hear from Jose today.
On stage 5, we pass through Chambéry, which is home to a Décathlon AG2R La Mondiale, or Decathlon AG2R La Mondiale, or however you want to pronounce it. Expect one of their riders, or a few of their riders, to go for success today, because a home race is an important race. Many World Tour teams now have a 3-tiered system of juniors, under 23 and an elite team, and scouting these days happens at a much younger age, going to 15 and 16-year-olds, as no one wants to miss out on the next Isaac Del Toro or Lenny Martinez. The Chambéry Cyclisme Formation has been around for over 20 years now. It started in the Division Nationale, the DN1 or French amateur scene, but has recently morphed into a dedicated under-23 UCI team. They're still racing DN1, but also Nation Cup and lower ranked races like Point 1 and Point 2. It has the same name as the World Tour team and the same look and feel. It has a clear focus on performance, but also on education and life outside of cycling. Prominent riders of World Tour teams coming from this development setup are Romain Bardet, Benoît Cosnefroy, Sylvain Dillier, the Paré-Peintre brothers, and new sensation Paul Lapéra, to name but a few. Some names to look out for in the under-23 team are first-year riders like Junior World Time Trial champion Oscar Chamberlain, Junior Cyclocross World champion Léo Bissiot, French champion Noah Isidore, or Giro Next Gen number 6 Kilian Verschuren, etc. They also lose quite a few of their talented riders and juniors to other teams, and that's testament of the talent they manage to attract. And the fight for talent, I can tell you, is quite an intense battle these days. Chambéry is also known for many other things. The Shroud of Turin caught my eye. It was in Chambéry, when in possession of the Dukes of Savoy, that it was severely damaged in a fire. For those of you who don't know, the Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot linen cloth bearing an image of a crucified man that has become a popular Catholic icon. For some, it is the authentic burial shroud of Jesus Christ. For others, it is a religious icon reflecting the story of the Christ and not necessarily the original shroud. It appears in historical records around 600 years ago. A French knight named Geoffroy de Charny allegedly presented it to the dean of the church in Léry, which is in northeastern France, as Jesus' authentic burial shroud. There's no record of how de Charny got his hands on the shroud, nor where it was during the 1300 other years since Christ's burial just outside of Jerusalem. After the church of Léry put the shroud on display, pilgrims came, and with their arrival, a lot of money as well. Around 1389, the Bishop of Troyes sent a report to Pope Clement VII, claiming an artist had confessed to forging the shroud. Furthermore, the bishop claimed the dean of the Léry church knew it was a fake and had used it to raise money anyway. In response, the Pope declared the shroud wasn't the true burial shroud of Christ. In 1453, Margaret de Charny, who was the knight's granddaughter, sold the shroud in exchange for 2 castles to the royal house of Savoy. It ended up in Chambéry. Margaret de Charny was actually excommunicated for selling the shroud. In 1502, so another 50 years later, the House of Savoy placed the shroud in the Sainte-Chapelle in Chambéry, and in 1532, a fire broke out in the chapel. It melted part of the silver in the container protecting the shroud, and this silver fell onto the part of the shroud, burning through it. And the burn marks and the water stains from where the fire was extinguished are still visible today. You can't see it though, because it's safely kept in a climate-controlled room in the Duomo of Turin in Italy, and the last time it was actually displayed in public was during a 2015 exhibition, and millions of visitors attended that one.
You know who else recently moved to Chambéry? Big friend of the podcast.
Big friend of the podcast.
In a slightly different role this year at the Tour de France. Did fist bump him today for the first time. Saw him for the first time today at the Tour.
No.
Yep. Muggers himself. Pierre Muglac. He has changed job from working for ASO
to working
to now
for...
being a press officer for Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial.
Yep.
Moved from Paris to Chambéry. Very excited for it. Cheaper rent, he told me. On his last ever day as an ASO press officer at the Tour of Oman, I got to share his 4x4 with him in the desert. He was fairly emotional, but I said I look forward to working with you.
You mean emotional and like happy was the emotion?
He was happy. I was quite sad because we'd really worked to develop a relationship with this guy who's fairly pivotal in the running of the Tour de France, at least from our avenue. But and now he's gone to AG2R, and we don't need that much from them, but hopefully maybe we will.
We're making inroads with Christophe, though.
Yeah.
Today, so we were not supposed to be able to get up here today.
Yeah,
there was all sorts of things sent
Are we in
out.
After Dark yet? No. Maybe let's talk about this in After Dark.
About this after dark?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm just trying to make that $1 monthly paywall that you can get at escapecollective.com/TDF go brrr. So thank you for listening to the free version.
Yeah, if you're listening on the free channel right now, thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.
We appreciate
you. Are
a
member, hang out and find all about our relationship with Christophe, our blossoming relationship with Christophe. We'll see you tomorrow.